Welcome to Public Speaking with Peter George. Do you want to be calm, confident, and credible every time you speak in public? Then stay tuned as Peter and his guests discuss public speaking tips, techniques, and tactics that help you increase your impact, influence, and income. Here's your host, Peter George.
Richard Strauss once said, "The human voice is the most beautiful instrument of all, but it's also the most difficult to play." How well do you play this wonderful gift you've been given? Do you vary your pace? Do you alter your pitch? How about your tone and your volume? And if you do all of these, are you sure you're making the changes at the most effective time? If you're not sure you're including enough vocal variety or using it to its greatest advantage, listen in as Madonna Hanna shares tips and ideas that'll make your talks even more compelling. Madonna was the only African-American student in her elementary class and one of only 8 African-Americans in her graduating high school class. Despite her creativity and talent, she faced bullying, racial prejudice, and isolation at school. As an adult, Madonna was recruited into a prestigious retail management executive training program in one of the largest department stores in New England. She also worked at the corporate headquarters of a national women's apparel manufacturing corporation. Later, Madonna embarked on a 32-year career teaching fashion marketing in Washington State. There, she was recognized for excellence in teaching at the state and national levels. As a motivational speaker, Madonna is committed to preventing bullying in schools and promoting an active second act. She is also a member of Toastmasters International, where she participates in international speech contests. Her goal is to utilize her skills, talents, and experiences to assist others in achieving their goals and dreams while building self-esteem. Madonna, welcome to the show.
Peter, thank you for having me on the show.
Madonna, many people emphasize the value of practicing. Why do you feel it's so important?
Practicing your public speaking skills is important, in my opinion, because it gives you an opportunity to practice the flow of your speech, pronunciations, and also the interest that you're going to put in your voice, which I refer to as vocal variety. A lot of new speakers or people who are just interested in public speaking may think, oh, I'm just going to stand up and just read a speech. It's easy. Anybody can do it. No, it's always good to practice.
You brought up vocal variety. What exactly is vocal variety, and why should our listeners include it in their presentations?
For your listeners who have absolutely no idea what vocal variety is, or they might be imagining what it might be, it's actually giving color to your presentation. It's almost like painting a picture. And as you speak, you should be able to transport your audience right into your speech, right into the places that you're talking about. Earlier, when we were talking about being from the New England area and we were talking about snow, having like an inch of snow. And you and I know that in New England, there's a lot of snow. And just being able to paint a picture and, okay, I'm transported back to the snow in December, right around Christmas, and how beautiful it is. And then you mentioned Denver too, about how beautiful that inch of snow is until it melts away.
So a lot of people think when they're building up illustrations and pictures in a presentation that they're doing it solely through words, but you're saying their voice can do it as well.
Exactly. Oh, yes, exactly. And for people who are not comfortable with that, they would need to practice. And vocal variety actually includes about 4 elements, such as pitch, tone, volume, and rate, which I can explain and give exercise examples if you'd like me to do that, Peter.
That would be great.
Okay. The first element would be pitch, which is how high or how low your voice is. Usually, women are known to have a high-pitched voice. Not all, but usually. Babies, especially when they're screaming or sometimes when they're laughing, it's a high-pitched sound. Usually men have a lower range. They usually have deep voices. Today, my voice is going to be a little deeper than usual because of my allergies. Now, if you have one range in your voice, that is known as a monotone. We have all known people who speak in a monotone, whether it's a teacher, preacher, or someone, and you sit and you listen and you want to fall asleep because they could actually have a really good speech, but that monotone is just killing it.
We've all been there when we've heard that.
Yes. And then there are people who have that excitement in their voice that they could read a phone book and bring excitement to it, or read a recipe book and bring color, excitement. And it's like, you should let me go out and buy that phone book, or phone books. Well, that's kind of back in the day now, but let me buy that recipe book. And it's all because of the excitement that the person has in their voice. And Peter, I'm going to quote you. In developing your presentation section, I love this quote. Realize that no one needs to listen to you. It's up to you to engage and captivate them. Unfortunately, many speakers never learn this. That is a key reason to practice, especially practice developing vocal variety. And I said, boy, he hit a home run with that. Good for you, Peter.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Now, an exercise that your listeners can use would be to sort of seesaw their voice up and down and use a sentence from a book, a newspaper that they're reading, and the sentence I'm going to use, and I'm going to use a low voice first. Darling, I want a new wardrobe. So that's my low range. My normal range, I'll try and hit that. Darling, I want a new wardrobe. And a high would be, darling, I want a new wardrobe. I'm sounding a little bit like Minnie Mouse, but you get the point of high. And I would suggest, because a listener might be saying, oh my gosh, if I do that, people are going to make fun of me. No, just do it by yourself and record yourself, which is very, very important when you practice, to always record yourself. The second element I'm going to go over is tone. Peter, did your parents ever say to you, young man, I don't like that tone in your voice? Did they?
Too often.
Yeah. Tone is emotion. You were probably reprimanded for something. And when you answered your parents, because it happened to me a couple of times, it's like, oh gosh. And it's like, I don't like that tone in your voice. And you gotta, I didn't mean it. But like I said, tone is emotion. It's the color, it's the texture, it's the spices. Like if you're cooking, and we were talking about food earlier, it's the spices that just add excitement. And an activity that your listeners can use is to take one word and say it 10 different ways using 10 different emotions. Now, Peter, give me a word.
Catch.
Okay, I'm going to use some different emotions. That word. Catch. catch. And I'm going to say it's as simple as that, but I have given people that activity and they've scratched their heads like, well, I didn't know you could say one word 10 different ways. Like, how do you do that? But it takes practice. It takes a lot of practice in order for people to even feel comfortable enough to say one simple word different ways, because 10 seems like a stretch. Just practice it.
Is that why sometimes when you're watching a show or a movie, an actor says something and though the words are correct, it doesn't seem to fit that particular instance?
Yes, sometimes it's the delivery of the word, because I can say, Peter, put your coat on so you don't catch a cold, which is like, what? Peter, put your coat on so you don't catch a cold. The delivery is different. And thank you for bringing that up so that your listeners will, oh, okay. Because sometimes, yes, it catches your ear like, what? That's the right word, but it just didn't sound right. And it was the delivery. For some reason, the director did not catch that.
Now, a couple of times you've mentioned recording yourself. Why is that so important?
You must be able to hear what other people hear when you speak. Always record yourself and listen to yourself a couple of times, because the first time it's like, is that how I sound? You know how emotional people are. Is that me? Is that how I sound? Yes, get over that. And then as you continue to listen to yourself several times, be very critical, like you're not you, and just listen to how you sound, especially when you are practicing the elements of vocal variety. You want to be able to hear the changes in your voice and also to become comfortable with it, because you have to be comfortable when you're speaking to people. And if you're new as a public speaker, or you don't have a lot of confidence in yourself yet, well, I just think that the more practice you have, the more comfortable you are going to become eventually. The third element of vocal variety is volume. Some people are loud, some are quiet. I am loud. I have theatrical experience, and anybody who has done any acting or singing or any kind of performing, you're a speaker, you know that you've got to be able to project your voice so that the person sitting in the back row can hear and enjoy what you're saying. Sometimes if you're watching something on television and you see a comedian or singers who will look out at the people who, there's maybe 50,000 people they're performing for, and they'll say, okay, you guys in the cheap seats up there, how you doing? Because you want to engage and include everyone. Now, there was a time when you were in the theater, and I presently do act, where you just really had to use your diaphragm and project your voice out. Now the stages are mic'd. You have to be really careful because the stage is mic'd. Even with a mic stage, you still have to be able to project your voice. And Peter, I know you'll probably agree with me on this, that people who have soft voices, they think a microphone is going to magnify their voice, but it doesn't.
No, you're absolutely right.
Yes, it doesn't. So I like to tell people with soft voices, you're going to have to speak up, but it's a microphone. Honey, yes, it is, but you are still going to have to project your voice. And in my case, I move the microphone away because I can project my voice. That's just a tip to people with soft voices. When you're using a microphone, you still need to speak up.
And you never want your listeners to strain to hear you.
Exactly, because you know what's going to happen, Peter. That cell phone is going to come out. The checkbook. Let me just balance my checkbook. Well, I can't hear, and they're not speaking loud enough for me to hear. So maybe it's not important. So I'll just do something else, or they may leave.
I tell my clients that when they're speaking, especially when they're not mic'd, take the person who's furthest away from you and speak 10 feet beyond them. They'll always say, well, why beyond the person who's furthest away? Why not just to them? And I say, they could be my age, and my hearing isn't the same as when I was 25. Or they could be 25 and have a hearing impairment. Hopefully, if they do, they sit up closer, but sometimes they can't. So you always want to make sure they're not straining.
Exactly. And there's nothing worse than looking out at an audience who's looking puzzled and they've just look like they've given up, which could either happen because of a monotone and you're quiet too. It's like, oh my God, they're killing me here. So you want to make sure to practice your volume too. So when you're practicing, you're not just practicing the content of your speech. Just a quick review, you're practicing your pitch, how high or low your voice is, your tone, the emotions. And I know that I had mentioned to practice with one word, but sometimes, and I do this too, I practice a turn of phrase different ways. I'm going to the store. I'm going to the store? I'm going to the store. That's a little more advanced than the one word and, having to say a phrase 10 different ways. And the final element would be rate. And we did talk about that before we came on air about how us Northerners have a tendency to speak very quickly, especially since you and I have roots in New England. Me, Boston, you're down there in Rhode Island, or me, Massachusetts, and you in Rhode Island. And we've had an opportunity to speak to people around the country. And as I mentioned, I have relatives in the deep South, and we would just get into arguments because my rate of speech is fast. Boston, New York, we're fast talkers. And in the South, where life is a little bit more laid back and genteel, the speech is slower. And I can remember being very frustrated. I'm frustrated with my cousins because I want them to come on, hurry up. And they're frustrated with me because you talk too fast. I'm like, oh my gosh, And you also mentioned too some of the communications situations that can turn out to be not only frustrating, but funny too, humorous too.
Oh, very much so.
So once again, I'm going to say practice recording a speech where you are speaking really, really fast. I want a new wardrobe and I want it now, just as fast as you can go. And then your normal rate, and then speak very slow. I want a new wardrobe. I want to go to the store, just so that your hearing will become acclimated to the differences. I know, and I'm sure you're going to agree with me, that I've asked people to listen to certain people speak and to point out some things. And they'll say, well, I never noticed that before, that person was a monotone, or maybe they were dropping word endings. And that's another thing to look for when you're practicing and you're listening to yourself. Do you drop your word endings? Is everything like I'm going or bringing? I mean, in some areas that's okay, but sometimes it's good to hit those word endings to be able to enunciate so that people can hear what you're saying, especially as you said before, if people are hard of hearing or if they're sitting in the back rows, you want to be able to enunciate. Also, you want to listen to what your voice does. Right now, because of allergies, my voice is lower and it's a little froggy to me and a little nasal. Some people have nasalities and they don't realize it, or maybe people might make fun of them, or they may go in and out of a nasality. Some words just might be nasal. Know that about yourself. Do you sniff? Do you tisk? Or is there a whistle? You know how sometimes when people will speak, I can't do it because I don't do it, but because of how their teeth are spaced, they might whistle. There just might be some little thing about your voice that you never would have noticed if you had not listened for it on a recording. There we go. I've gone over the 4 elements of vocal variety. I have given examples for people to practice and, of course, always record. And something else, and I'm sure you tell your listeners to do this too, listen to other people who speak.
Yes.
I usually put this in 2 different categories. Go online, go to the library, get a copy of audio speeches of famous people like John F. Kennedy. Of course, coming from New England, sure. John F. Kennedy, Martin Luther King, Barbara Jordan was a good, very good speaker out of Texas for people who don't know who she is. Michelle Obama delivers a really good speech. Just listen to various people, and also start to listen to the minister in church. Start to listen to the people who give the announcements in church. Or if you're at a PTA meeting, listen to who's ever giving the minutes or whatever. The next time you go to a school board meeting or a council meeting, listen to these people who you have elected. Listen to them speak. Listen to politicians who speak. Or just listen to someone where you're just going to maybe an art event and someone is giving a presentation. I think that you should always take notes.
What will they be looking for when they're taking the notes?
The vocal variety elements, a turn of phrase. Also, look at the audience. What's the audience doing while that person is speaking? Are they looking at their phones, or are they leaned forward? Or do they have a look of interest in their eyes? And then what I like to do is, after the presentation, ask people in the audience specific questions. Like, I noticed you look so enthralled. What was it about that speaker that had you leaning forward?
Great idea.
Yes, ask them. Just kind of take a mental note. Don't, you're not standing in front of them like you're interviewing them, which you are, because you're making an evaluation. Ask yourself, do you agree? Do you disagree? Did you not pick up something? Because a person can give a really wonderful speech and deliver it very well and have the majority of the audience with them. And sometimes there's 1 or 2 people who will leave with, oh gosh, glad that's over. I mean, I've given presentations, Peter, and this has been so consistent with me that when I receive my evaluations, I already know that there's going to be one or two people who just did not like something, because I'll have, if I'm rated from 1 to 5, if the rating is from 1 to 5, there's going to be at least a 1 or 2. And I might have 4.5s or 5s, but I already know there's going to be a 2 in there. And in most situations, the low ones are thrown out because it's just a few of them. But I just know that's going to happen. Has that happened to you?
Oh, God, yeah.
Yes.
And it used to bother the heck out of me. And it's human nature that you focus in on that 1 or that 2 or the 3 ones or whatever it is. And you have 180 3s, 4s, and 5s.
Exactly. And I think for new speakers that they need to realize that if they're standing in front of a group of people, 25, 50, 100, and the majority of the audience has their attention, but there is that one person who is very obviously has that phone, or their demeanor is, oh gosh, they're rolling their eyes or whatever. Don't focus on that person and think you're doing a terrible job, because that will throw off your momentum when you are speaking. It will throw off your vocal variety. It'll just throw you off.
That person will actually be right in the end if you do that. It will be a bad presentation.
Yes, because with some people, it's their job. They just go from presentation to presentation to roll their eyes and give you a low evaluation. And you are absolutely right when you say there's like 180, but you are focused on those 2 and like, well, what did I do? How did I lose them? Don't worry about it. That's how it is when you put yourself out there to be a public speaker.
With my clients, when they're presenting, if I can be there, what I do is I have 2 camera setups, one on them on the stage, and then one pointing out to the audience. And later on, we review them, we sync them. So if we're looking at the audience, it's in sync with looking at the speaker as well. And there's one particular client of mine who's an excellent presenter, said, look at these 2 people in the audience. What did I do wrong? And she couldn't stop focusing on those 2 people. And I said, yeah, but listen when you said this in this way. And then you paused, and whatever you did, look at the reaction from the other 300 people.
Exactly.
It was spectacular. What could I have done different here?
Nothing.
Absolutely, because you don't know why.
It's what you're wearing. You remind them of somebody they don't like. It could be a myriad of things. And Peter, you said something that I was going to touch on too, pausing. It is very important to learn how to use pauses effectively, because when you pause, it gives the audience a chance to stop and like, well, what's coming up next? Is there an important point coming up next? Or is this person having a senior moment? Because if the pause goes too long, it gets a little uncomfortable and awkward. So it's very, very important to practice pausing so that you can deliver an important point afterwards, or you're creating excitement, drama, or mystery. And then there was a knock at the door. Who was going to go answer the door? Who could it be? Because I used that pause in there. Oh, there was a knock at the door. And everybody was like looking at each other, trying to decide, but no, let's add a little mystery and drama. Who could it be? We're out in the wilderness. There was a knock at the door. Let the emotions come in, like let the audience ask, who could it be? Because they've already told us they're in the middle of nowhere. They're in Antarctica.
Do you think that when people are nervous and their adrenaline is really flowing, that their tone and rate and pitch and the like changes without them knowing it, and that they even forget to pause?
Oh, yes. Yes. When people are nervous, there's just a variety of things that they can do. One thing is sometimes they just speed up because they're thinking, I just want to get this over with and get off the stage. You know, the vocal variety, the pausing everything goes out the window. Also, when people are nervous, they can sometimes pause too long because of the nerves. Maybe they've lost their place, they've lost their train of thought because they're so nervous, or perhaps they're looking at that one person who's rolling their eyes and they lose their train of thought because they're thinking, why are they rolling their eyes at me? And your mind is like, where am I? Where am I in my speech? Where am I? So that factors into what's going on also.
Madonna, this has been great. I really have enjoyed our time together, both during the podcast episode and our talk beforehand. I've learned some things. I've learned a number of things during this. Where can our listeners learn even more about your services and you?
My website is dropkickthedrama.com.
Dropkickthedrama.com.
Yes, that is my website. And I'm on Instagram. Would you like that too? Instagram at Madonna Fit, Fast, and Fabulous.
Good for you. Madonna, this has been a lot of fun. I really appreciate you taking the time and being on with us today.
Thank you so much, Peter. I've had fun. Speaking to you, it was just like being back home again in New England. It really was.
That's a wrap of another episode of Public Speaking with Peter George. Be sure to rate, review, and subscribe wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. Tune in Monday when you'll hear another episode of Public Speaking with Peter George, and again Thursday for your next episode of Quick Bites, public speaking tips and techniques you can digest in 5 minutes or less. Until next time, remember, when it comes to speaking in public, you've got this.